I'm Mario, 33 years old, and I never thought my financial success would become the wedge that drove my family apart. For 6 years, I paid the mortgage on my parents' home without complaint, happy to give back to the people who raised me. But that all changed the night. My mother screamed those words that still echo in my head. "You're ungrateful. Get out, and never come back." Little did she know how quickly she'd regret those words. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment telling me where you're viewing from, hit that like and subscribe button, and prepare yourself for a story about how sometimes the people closest to us can take our generosity for granted until it's gone. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Portland, where my parents, Teresa and Frank, worked hard to provide a comfortable life for me and my younger brother, Lucas. Dad ran a small printing business while Mom worked part-time as an administrative assistant. We weren't rich by any means, but we never went without the essentials. They instilled in me the value of hard work and saving money from an early age. Even as a kid, I was fascinated by business and real estate. While other kids collected baseball cards or video games, I'd clip newspaper articles about property developments and local business openings. By 13, I was mowing lawns and shoveling snow to save money. My parents thought it was cute, but they didn't realize I was dead serious about my future. High school was uneventful for me socially, but academically I thrived. I worked weekends at the local hardware store, saving every penny for college. When I got accepted to State University with a partial scholarship, I was ecstatic. Even with the scholarship, college wasn't cheap, so I juggled 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. My roommates partied while I worked night shifts at a 24-hour diner, delivered pizzas on weekends, and tutored other students between classes. Those 4 years were grueling, but I graduated with a business degree, minimal student loans, and a job offer from a financial services firm in Seattle. My starting salary wasn't impressive, but I lived frugally, sharing an apartment with 2 other guys and brown bagging my lunch every day. I studied for additional certifications at night, volunteered for extra projects at work, and within 3 years I'd been promoted twice. By 25, I had saved enough for a down payment on a small condo. Nothing fancy, but it was mine, and I felt proud every time I turned the key in the lock. My career continued to progress, and by 27, I was managing a team and earning a comfortable 6-figure salary. Life was going according to plan. Then everything changed for my family. Dad's printing business had been struggling for years as everything went digital, but he refused to adapt. Eventually, the business went under, taking their savings with it. At 59, Dad found himself unemployed with outdated skills and a mortgage they could barely afford. Mom's part-time job wasn't enough to cover their expenses, and they were 3 months behind on payments when they finally called me in tears. I flew home that weekend and was shocked at their situation. Past due bills covered the kitchen table, and the refrigerator was nearly empty. Without hesitation, I wrote a check to bring their mortgage current and set up automatic payments from my account. "Just until Dad finds a new job," Mom said, hugging me tightly. "We'll pay you back every penny." It was supposed to be temporary, 6 months at most. Dad would find work, they'd get back on their feet, and I'd go back to focusing on my own future. But 6 months turned into a year, then 2. Every time Dad had a job interview, something went wrong. The company downsized. The position was filled internally. He was overqualified. Meanwhile, Mom's hours were cut, adding more pressure. I didn't mind at first. I was doing well, and helping my parents felt good. They had sacrificed for me growing up, and now I could return the favor. But as time passed, I noticed subtle changes in their attitude, especially Mom's. What started as tearful gratitude evolved into expectation. When I visited, she'd casually mention other expenses they were struggling with, hinting until I offered to help. Dad seemed uncomfortable with the arrangement, but never contradicted Mom. By year 3 of paying their mortgage, I noticed Mom had redecorated the living room with expensive new furniture. When I asked about it, she dismissed my question with a wave. "We deserve a few nice things, Mario. Life's been so hard lately." Dad avoided my eyes during this conversation, staring at the new 60-inch television instead. I tried to bring up the subject of their financial plan several times, asking about Dad's job search or suggesting Mom look for full-time work. These conversations always ended with Mom getting emotional, reminding me how they'd sacrificed everything for me growing up. "After all we did for you," she'd say, "this is the least you can do." It was effective at shutting down any discussion about changing our arrangement. By year 5, the mortgage payments had become simply another bill in my monthly budget. I rarely thought about it anymore, even as the amount I'd spent supporting them crept well into 6 figures. They were my parents, after all. What else could I do? But a nagging feeling was growing inside me, a sense that something wasn't right about the situation. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. Everything started to shift when I met Sophia at a charity event hosted by my company. Smart, compassionate, and refreshingly direct, she worked as a child psychologist and had a way of seeing through facades that both impressed and unnerved me. Our first date turned into a second, then a third, and before I knew it, we were spending every weekend together. After dating for 4 months, I finally took her to meet my parents. The visit started pleasantly enough, with Mom preparing her signature lasagna and Dad showing Sophia his collection of vintage jazz records. But I noticed Mom's tight smile whenever Sophia talked about her career or our relationship. The tension was palpable. On the drive back to Seattle, Sophia was uncharacteristically quiet. When I asked what was wrong, she hesitated before answering. "Mario, has your mom always talked to you that way?" "What way?" I asked, genuinely confused. "Like you owe her something. I counted 6 times she mentioned how much they sacrificed for you, and 4 times she brought up your obligation to family." She turned to look at me, and the way she changed the subject when you mentioned possibly cutting back on your financial support, it was so manipulative. I defended my parents, instinctively explaining their financial difficulties and my desire to help. But Sophia's observations lingered in my mind. Was I being manipulated? I pushed the thought away. They were my parents, not con artists. 2 weeks after that visit, I received a major promotion at work. The new position came with significantly more responsibility and required occasional travel, but the salary increase was substantial. When I called my parents to share the good news, Mom's first question wasn't about my new role or how I felt. "That's wonderful, honey. How much more will you be making?" she asked, not even trying to disguise her interest. "About 30% more," I replied, immediately regretting my honesty. "That's perfect timing. Your father and I have been thinking about some renovations to the house. The bathroom is so outdated, and you know how your father's back bothers him. A walk-in tub would really help." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. "Mom, this promotion means more work hours and more stress. I was actually thinking about putting the extra money toward my retirement account." The silence on the other end was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice had that wounded tone I'd grown to dread. "I see. Your retirement is more important than your father's health. I understand." By the time I hung up, I'd somehow agreed to increase my monthly contribution to their expenses. Sophia found me sitting in dark silence on my balcony that evening, a untouched beer warming in my hand. I told her about the conversation, expecting sympathy. Instead, she sat down across from me, her expression serious. "Mario, do you realize what's happening? They're using guilt to control you financially. This isn't what loving parents do." Her words stung because deep down I knew she was right, but admitting it meant confronting a painful truth about the people I loved most. So I changed the subject, and Sophia was wise enough not to push. The situation grew more complicated when my brother Lucas lost his apartment and moved back in with our parents. At 30, he'd never held a steady job, bouncing between part-time gigs and entrepreneurial ventures that never materialized into actual income. Now he was living rent-free in our childhood home, adding to the expenses I was covering. During one of my visits, I discovered Lucas had converted the garage into a music studio with equipment that must have cost thousands. When I questioned this, Mom jumped to his defense. "He needs to express his creativity, Mario. Not everyone can be a corporate robot like you." The comment hurt, but I swallowed my response. Later that night, I overheard Mom and Lucas talking in the kitchen. "Don't worry about Mario," she said. "He makes plenty. He's just stingy sometimes. I know how to handle him." Their laughter felt like a knife to my gut. As my relationship with Sophia deepened, my time became increasingly split between work, her, and obligations to my family. Mom's calls grew more frequent and more demanding. If I missed Sunday dinner because of work, I'd receive guilt-laden texts about my changing priorities. If I brought Sophia along, Mom would make passive-aggressive comments about outsiders not understanding family matters. The breaking point came when I had to cancel a visit due to an emergency at work. A major client was threatening to pull their account, and I needed to fly to Chicago on short notice. Mom was livid. "Your father has been looking forward to seeing you all week. How could you be so selfish?" For the first time, I pushed back. "Mom, this is my career. I can't just drop everything because Dad wants to watch football with me." Your career, she mimicked. "What about your family? We're the ones who always supported you, and this is how you repay us, by abandoning us for some meeting." "I'm not abandoning anyone," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm literally paying your mortgage. How is that abandonment?" "Oh, so now you're throwing that in our face. Real nice, Mario, real nice." She hung up on me. That night, Sophia found me researching exactly how much I'd spent supporting my parents over the years. The number made my stomach drop over $120,000, not including gifts, groceries I bought during visits, or restaurant meals I always paid for. "I think it's time for a serious conversation with them," Sophia said gently. "This isn't sustainable emotionally or financially." I nodded, finally ready to face what I'd been avoiding for years. "You're right. This has to change." Sophia and I had been talking about moving in together for weeks. Her lease was ending soon, and it made sense both emotionally and financially. One evening, as we browsed apartment listings online, she paused and looked at me seriously. "Before we do this, I need to know that we're building our life together, not just adding another financial obligation to your plate," she said. "I love how generous you are, but I'm concerned about your family situation." Her words crystallized something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. I was carrying my parents financially at the expense of my own future, and possibly my relationship with Sophia. "I'm going to talk to them this weekend," I decided. Really talk to them, about a plan for them to become financially independent. I spent hours preparing what I would say, even writing key points on index cards like I was getting ready for a business presentation. Sophia helped me practice playing the role of my defensive mother with uncomfortable accuracy. By Sunday morning, when we drove to my parents' house, I felt as ready as I'd ever be. I'd asked Mom to make her pot roast, my dad's favorite meal, hoping the good food would create a positive atmosphere. When we arrived, the house smelled wonderful and Mom greeted us warmly. Too warmly. Her overly enthusiastic hug, and the way she glared at Sophia when I wasn't looking, set my nerves on edge immediately. Lucas was there too, which I hadn't expected. He lounged on the couch, barely acknowledging our arrival beyond a nod in our direction. Dad at least seemed genuinely happy to see us, giving Sophia a fatherly hug that made me smile despite my anxiety. Dinner started pleasantly enough. We discussed safe topics: Dad's garden, Sophia's work with children, the unusually warm weather. I waited until we were eating dessert before clearing my throat. "I wanted to talk to you all about something important." I began, my mouth suddenly dry. "It's about our financial arrangement." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Mom's smile vanished, and Dad became very interested in his apple pie. Lucas rolled his eyes dramatically. "I've been happy to help these past 6 years," I continued. "But I think it's time we discussed a transition plan. I'd like to help you become financially independent again." Mom put down her fork with deliberate slowness. "What exactly are you saying, Mario?" "I'm saying that I need to start focusing on my own future. Sophia and I are getting serious, and Mom interrupted, her voice sharp. "So that's what this is about. She doesn't want you helping your family." Sophia stiffened beside me but remained silent as we'd agreed. "This isn't about Sophia," I said firmly. "It's about creating a sustainable situation for everyone. Dad, you've been out of work for 6 years now. There are jobs out there that would be perfect for your skills." Dad looked uncomfortable but nodded slightly. "I've been looking, son. It's not easy at my age." "Have you really been looking, though?" I asked gently. "Because from what I can see, you haven't had an interview in over a year." "How dare you," Mom interjected. "Your father has applied for dozens of positions. It's not his fault that employers discriminate against older workers." "I understand that, Mom. But there are options we haven't explored. Career retraining programs, part-time work to start, maybe even starting a small business again, but with updated services. So now you're a career expert, Lucas snorted. The golden boy has all the answers. I ignored him, keeping my focus on our parents. And Mom, you're working 20 hours a week. Is there a reason you haven't looked for full-time employment? Her face flushed. I have health issues, as you well know. My doctor advised limited working hours. This was news to me. What health issues? You've never mentioned any diagnosis. I don't have to justify my medical situation to you, she snapped. The point is, we're your parents. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, put you through college. You didn't put me through college. I corrected her. I worked 3 jobs and got scholarships. We gave you a roof over your head. We supported your dreams when everyone else said they were unrealistic. And now that we need a little help, you're abandoning us because your girlfriend thinks we're a burden. I felt my carefully prepared points crumbling under the weight of her emotional onslaught. That's not what's happening, Mom. I just think 6 years of support was meant to be temporary and— How much do you make now, Mario? She interrupted. 6 figures, right. More money than your father and I ever saw in our lives. And you're complaining about helping the people who gave you life. I'm not complaining. I'm trying to have an adult conversation about cutting us off because she wants our money, Mom said, pointing at Sophia with her dessert fork. Teresa, Dad said quietly, That's not fair. Oh, so you're taking his side now. After everything we've done for him, after all our sacrifices, Mom's voice was rising steadily. This isn't about sides, I tried again. It's about finding a solution that works for everyone long term. Mom stood up suddenly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I know exactly what this is about. It's about you thinking you're better than us now. With your fancy job and your fancy girlfriend and your fancy condo, you've forgotten where you came from. Mom, please calm down, I said, feeling the conversation spiraling out of control. I'm just suggesting we create a timeline for abandoning your family, she shouted. After everything we've done for you, you ungrateful, selfish boy. I've given you over $120,000, I said, my own voice rising now. How is that ungrateful? The room went deathly quiet. Dad's face paled, and even Lucas looked shocked. Clearly they hadn't realized the total amount. You're counting, Mom whispered, as if I'd confessed to a horrible crime. You've been keeping track of every penny you've given your own parents. That's not the point, I backpedaled, realizing my mistake. I'm just saying I've been happy to help, but it was supposed to be temporary and— Get out. Mom's voice was suddenly cold. What? You heard me. You're ungrateful. Get out and never come back. Her face was contorted with rage. If we're such a burden to you, then go. Go live your perfect life with her, and forget you ever had a family. Teresa, for God's sake, Dad finally intervened, but it was too late. I stood up slowly, feeling numb. Sophia rose beside me, her hand finding mine. I think we should go, she said quietly. Yes, take him away, Mom spat. You've gotten what you wanted. I looked at my father, hoping he would say something, stand up to her, but he just sat there looking torn and miserable. Lucas smirked, clearly enjoying the drama. In that moment, I saw my family clearly for perhaps the first time, and what I saw broke my heart. Without another word, Sophia and I walked out the front door, closing it gently behind us. In the car, I sat with my hands gripping the steering wheel, too stunned to drive. Are you okay? Sophia asked, her voice gentle. I wasn't okay, not even close, but I nodded anyway, started the engine and drove away from the house I'd been financially supporting for 6 years. I didn't look back. The first few days after the blow-up were a blur. I went through the motions at work, attended meetings, responded to emails, but inside I felt hollow. 6 years of financial support, and this was how it ended. With my mother screaming at me to get out and never return. The injustice of it burned in my chest, but underneath was a deeper pain. The realization that perhaps my family didn't love me the way I'd always believed they did. Sophia was my rock during this time. She suggested I move in with her immediately, rather than waiting for her lease to end. No sense paying for two places when we're together every night anyway, she reasoned. But we both knew the real reason she didn't want me to be alone with my thoughts. My phone remained conspicuously silent. No apologetic call from Dad. No text from Mom saying she'd overreacted. Not even a sarcastic message from Lucas. The silence spoke volumes. They were waiting for me to cave, to apologize, to come crawling back and beg forgiveness for my ingratitude. The thought made my stomach churn. A week after the confrontation, I scheduled an appointment with Janet, a financial advisor I'd met through work. She reviewed my financial situation with professional detachment, noting the significant drain that supporting my parents had placed on my long-term goals. Based on your current income and expenses, you should have approximately $300,000 more in retirement savings and investments than you currently do, she observed, turning her computer screen so I could see the projections. That's the opportunity cost of the support you've provided. The number stunned me. Not just the money I'd directly given them, but what that money could have become if invested over the same period. Years of compound interest lost forever. And if I continue at the current rate, I asked, dreading the answer. Janet ran the numbers. Assuming you maintain this level of support for another decade until your parents reach full retirement age, you're looking at a potential loss of over $1 million in future assets. $1 million. My financial security in retirement, my future children's college funds, the dream home Sophia and I had tentatively discussed, all sacrificed on the altar of familial obligation. What would you advise? I asked, feeling slightly ill. Janet was tactful but direct. From a purely financial perspective, this arrangement is unsustainable and severely impacting your future. You need to establish boundaries. Boundaries. The word resonated with me. What boundaries had I established with my family? None. I'd allowed them unfettered access to my finances, my time, my emotional energy, and what had it gotten me? Thrown out of the house I was paying for. That evening I told Sophia about the meeting. Janet says I need boundaries, I said, still processing everything. Janet is right, Sophia replied. But boundaries aren't just financial, Mario. They're emotional too. Your mother has been emotionally manipulating you for years. That's a strong accusation, I said defensively, old habits dying hard. Is it? Think about how she responds when you try to discuss reducing support. The tears, the guilt trips, the accusations. That's textbook manipulation. I thought about Mom's frequent references to all they'd done for me. The way she'd reframe any attempt at discussion as me being ungrateful. The subtle digs about my career choices while simultaneously benefiting from the income those choices provided. The pit in my stomach deepened. I need to stop the automatic payments, I said suddenly, the decision crystallizing in my mind. Are you sure? Sophia asked, not disagreeing but wanting me to be certain. Yes. I can't keep enabling this situation. And honestly, after what Mom said, why would I keep paying the mortgage on a house I'm not welcome in? The next morning I called my bank and halted the automatic transfer that had been paying my parents' mortgage for 6 years. The customer service representative asked if I wanted to schedule a new payment date. No, I said firmly. I'm discontinuing the payments permanently. The words felt both terrifying and liberating. I waited for the fallout, expecting an immediate call when the payment didn't arrive on the first of the month. But again, silence. Days passed. A week. Still nothing. Part of me was relieved, but another part was puzzled. Had they somehow found the money to make the payment themselves? Had they finally realized the unsustainability of our arrangement? While waiting for the inevitable confrontation, I focused on rebuilding my life. Sophia and I settled into our shared apartment, merging our books and furniture, establishing new routines together. I met with Janet again to create a financial recovery plan, increasing my retirement contributions, and starting a dedicated investment account to recoup some of the lost opportunity costs. I also began seeing Dr. Williams, a therapist Sophia recommended. Our sessions were uncomfortable at first. I wasn't used to discussing my feelings or examining family dynamics, but slowly I began to recognize patterns that had been invisible to me before. What you're describing sounds like financial abuse, Dr. Williams said during one session, his tone matter of fact. Abuse. I repeated the word, feeling too harsh. They're my parents. Parents can be abusive too, Mario. Financial abuse occurs when someone uses money to control or manipulate another person. Your mother used emotional manipulation to extract financial support, and when you tried to establish boundaries, she responded with rejection and verbal abuse. That fits the pattern. I sat with that uncomfortable truth for several days, turning it over in my mind, examining my family history through this new lens. The signs had been there all along. Mom controlling the family finances even when Dad was the primary earner. Her expensive tastes despite their modest income. The way money was alternately weaponized and held over my head growing up. We can't afford that when it was something I wanted, but somehow there was always money for things she deemed important. 2 weeks after I stopped the mortgage payments, I was starting to hope that perhaps my parents had accepted the new reality. Maybe they were finally taking responsibility for their own finances. Maybe the blow-up had been a blessing in disguise, forcing a necessary change. Then my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Why haven't you paid the mortgage? We got a late notice from the bank. Call me as soon as possible." No apology, no acknowledgement of what had transpired. Just the expectation that I would continue financial support despite being told to get out and never come back. I stared at the message for a long time, emotions warring within me. The old Mario would have immediately called, apologized for the oversight, and arranged a payment. The old Mario would have done anything to avoid conflict with his family. But I wasn't that person anymore. After consulting with Sophia and taking a deep breath, I typed a simple response. "Oh, I thought I wasn't welcome. Mom made it pretty clear when she told me to get out and never come back." Then I turned off my phone and went for a long run, knowing that when I turned it back on, my life would never be the same. When I returned from my run and powered on my phone, it nearly vibrated out of my hand with incoming notifications. 6 missed calls from Dad, 8 from Mom, 3 voicemails, 13 text messages. My family had collectively lost their minds. I scrolled through the texts, first watching the progression from confusion to anger to panic to bargaining. "Dad, what are you talking about? Of course you're welcome. Your mother was just upset. Mom, this is childish behavior, Mario. Turn on your phone and call us immediately. Dad, the bank says we're 15 days past due. This will hurt our credit score. Mom, after everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by trying to make us homeless. Lucas, way to go, bro. Mom's having a complete meltdown. Hope you're happy. Dad, please, son. We need to talk about this. We can work something out. Mom, if you don't call us back, right now, don't bother calling ever again." The last one made me laugh out loud despite everything. Wasn't that precisely what she'd told me 2 weeks ago? To get out and never come back? The cognitive dissonance was staggering. The voicemails were worse. Mom alternated between sobbing and screaming, accusing me of abandonment, ingratitude, and being completely under that woman's control. Dad sounded defeated, pleading rather than demanding, which was somehow harder to hear. Lucas predictably just called to tell me I was ruining everyone's lives and should man up and take care of the family. Sophia found me sitting on our balcony, phone in hand, staring at nothing. "That bad?" she asked, sitting beside me. "Worse," I admitted. "They're acting like I'm the villain in this story, like I've ambushed them with this decision." "That's not surprising," she said. "You've disrupted the status quo. They're panicking because their meal ticket is suddenly gone." "They're my family, not parasites," I protested, old loyalties dying hard. "Family doesn't treat each other like ATMs," she countered gently. "What are you going to do now?" It was the million-dollar question. I couldn't simply ignore them forever, as tempting as that might be. But I also couldn't go back to the way things were. The cycle had to be broken for everyone's sake. "I think I need to meet with them," I decided. But on my terms, not theirs. And with clear boundaries established beforehand. I texted Dad, "I'm willing to meet and discuss the situation, but not at your house. Let's meet at Riverside Park on Saturday at 2. I'll bring my financial advisor to help us create a transition plan." His response was immediate. "Why do we need a financial advisor? This is family business." "It became business when you expected me to indefinitely finance your lifestyle," I replied, surprising myself with my directness. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. After a lengthy pause, fine, Saturday at 2. The park was neutral territory, public enough that a scene was unlikely, but with enough private areas for a serious conversation. Janet had agreed to join us, bringing professional expertise to what would inevitably be an emotional discussion. Saturday arrived bright and clear. Sophia offered to come for moral support, but I declined. I need to handle this myself, I told her, but I'll call you right after. I spotted my parents sitting on a bench near the pond, looking tense. To my surprise, Lucas wasn't with them. Dad stood when he saw me approaching, relief evident on his face. Mom remained, seated, her expression unreadable. Mario, Dad said, embracing me awkwardly. Thank you for coming. Mom didn't stand or offer any greeting. She looked past me, scanning the area. Where's this financial person? I don't see anyone. Janet is meeting us here at 2:15, I explained. I wanted a few minutes with just us first. How considerate, Mom said, sarcasm dripping from every syllable. After ignoring our calls for days. Teresa, Dad warned, then turned to me. Son, we need to understand what's happening. The mortgage payment is 20 days late now. We got a notice from the bank about possible foreclosure if we don't catch up. I'm sorry about that, I said, genuinely meaning it. I should have given you notice before stopping the payments. That was wrong of me. Mom snorted. So you admit you were wrong? Good. Now when will you restart the payments? The direct question caught me off guard, though it shouldn't have. I won't be restarting them, Mom. That's what we're here to discuss. A transition to you and Dad becoming financially independent again. Her face flushed with anger. After everything. Please don't start with after everything we've done for you. I interrupted, my voice firm but quiet. I acknowledge that you raised me. I'm grateful for that. But that doesn't obligate me to support you indefinitely as adults. We're your parents, she hissed. That's a lifetime commitment. Yes, you're my parents, and I love you. But the financial arrangement we've had for the past 6 years isn't healthy for any of us. It's created resentment and entitlement instead of gratitude and independence. Entitlement. Mom practically spat the word. Is that what your therapist girlfriend has been telling you? That we're entitled? I took a deep breath, refusing to be baited. This isn't about Sophia. This is about us. About the fact that I've been carrying the financial burden for our family while simultaneously being treated like I'm not doing enough. Dad placed a restraining hand on Mom's arm as she opened her mouth to retort. Let's hear him out, Teresa. Thank you, Dad, I said, grateful for the intervention. Look, I know this is difficult. Change always island. But the current situation isn't sustainable. You're both relatively young and capable. There's no reason you can't support yourselves with some adjustments and planning. Easy for you to say, Mom muttered. You have no idea how hard it is out there at our age. Actually, I do, I replied calmly, which is why I brought Janet. She specializes in midlife career transitions and financial recovery. She's helped dozens of people in situations similar to yours. As if on cue, Janet approached professional in a navy suit carrying a leather portfolio. I made introductions, noting Mom's cold handshake and Dad's nervous one. Thank you for meeting with me. Janet began, her tone warm but businesslike. Mario has shared some details about your financial situation, and I believe I can help you create a sustainable path forward. We don't need financial advice, Mom snapped. We need our son to honor his commitments to his family. Janet didn't flinch. Mrs. Acosta, I understand this is a stressful situation, but based on the information I've reviewed, the current arrangement isn't serving anyone's best interests. Mario has provided over $120,000 in direct support over the past 6 years, plus additional uncalculated expenses. Mom's eyes widened, and she looked at Dad, who seemed equally shocked. Despite my mentioning the figure during our argument, it clearly hadn't registered. That level of support, Janet continued, has significantly impacted Mario's own financial health and future security. Meanwhile, it hasn't helped you and Mr. Acosta establish independence or address the underlying issues in your financial situation. So he's just cutting us off? Dad asked, his voice strained. After all this time? Not at all, Janet replied. What I'm proposing is a structured transition plan. Mario would continue limited support for 6 months while you implement specific steps toward financial independence. I would work with you weekly to ensure progress and address any obstacles. She opened her portfolio and laid out printouts of a detailed plan, including potential job opportunities for both of them, budget restructuring, and debt management strategies. As Dad leaned forward with interest, Mom crossed her arms tightly across her chest. "This is insulting," she declared. "Being treated like financial children by our own son." "Mom," I said quietly, 6 years ago you promised this would be temporary. Just until Dad finds a job, you said. That was 72 mortgage payments ago. Dad looked down, shame evident in his slumped shoulders. "He's right, Teresa. We've been taking advantage." Mom whirled on him. "Taking advantage? How can you say that, after everything we sacrificed for him growing up, the vacations we didn't take, the second car we didn't buy? We gave him everything. And I've been repaying that generosity for 6 years," I said. "But it has to end sometime. I have my own life to build, my own future to secure." With her, Mom sneered. "She's the one behind this, isn't she? Sophia doesn't want her money going to support your family." "It's my money, Mom. And Sophia has never once complained about me supporting you. She's only concerned about the emotional toll it's taking on me, on all of us." "Emotional toll," Mom scoffed. "Since when did you get so sensitive?" Janet intervened smoothly. "Mrs. Acosta, financial stress impacts relationships in profound ways. What I'm seeing here is a family in crisis, not just a financial problem. The plan I'm proposing addresses both aspects." For the next hour, Janet outlined her recommendations in detail. Dad asked thoughtful questions and took notes. Mom alternated between sullen silence and barbed comments. It was exhausting but necessary. Finally, Janet closed her portfolio. "I'll email you both the complete plan. Take some time to review it, and we can meet again next week to address any questions or concerns." As Janet packed up, Dad turned to me. "Son, I want you to know. I'm sorry. For everything. For letting this go on so long without saying anything. For not standing up when your mother... Well, I should have been stronger." His apology, unexpected and genuine, caught me off guard. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot." Mom stood abruptly. "If we're done here, Frank, I'd like to go home. I have a headache." "Actually, Mom," I said, "there's one more thing. My conditions for any continued support." "Conditions," she repeated incredulously. "Yes. First, I need an acknowledgement that what you said 2 weeks ago was hurtful and inappropriate. Get out and never come back isn't something you say to someone who's been supporting you for 6 years. She pressed her lips together tightly. Second, I need respect for my relationship with Sophia. No more snide comments or accusations. Mom looked away, refusing to meet my eyes. And finally, I need your commitment to follow Janet's plan. If you're not willing to work toward independence, then I can't continue supporting you even temporarily. And if we don't agree to these conditions, Mom asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Then you'll need to find another solution for your financial situation, I said simply. The choice is yours. Dad placed his hand on Mom's shoulder. We'll think about it, son, and we'll let you know. As they walked away, I couldn't tell if we'd made progress or just deepened the divide. But for the first time in years, I felt like I'd stood up for myself. Whatever happened next, that was a victory worth celebrating. The week following our meeting in the park was tense. Mom maintained radio silence, but Dad texted daily updates. He'd applied for 3 jobs. He'd spoken with Janet about restructuring their budget. He'd listed some of his vintage record collection on an online marketplace. Small steps, but significant ones. What he didn't mention was Mom's response to the transition plan. Her silence spoke volumes. After years of emotional manipulation, she'd lost her primary leverage and was retreating into stubborn resistance. I wondered if she'd ever come around, or if this was the beginning of a permanent estrangement. The thought hurt more than I wanted to admit. Despite everything, she was still my mother. I still remembered her singing me to sleep when I had nightmares, teaching me to ride a bike, beaming with pride at my college graduation. Those memories existed alongside the manipulation and entitlement. Both versions of my mother were real. 10 days after our meeting, Dad called rather than texted. His voice sounded different, more energetic than I'd heard in years. I got a job, he announced without preamble. Assistant manager at Burlington Coat Factory. It's not printing, but it's retail management, which I have experience with. Benefits after 90 days, and the salary is decent for part-time. Dad, that's fantastic, I said, genuinely thrilled. When do you start? Monday. 25 hours a week to start with potential for full-time after 3 months. The pride in his voice was unmistakable. I wanted you to be the first to know. I'm really proud of you, I told him. How does Mom feel about it? His hesitation told me everything. She's adjusting to the idea. Oh, you know your mother. Change is hard for her. Has she looked for work herself? I asked, already knowing the answer. Not yet. But she did meet with Janet yesterday to discuss options. That's progress, right? It was something, at least. Definitely progress. And Lucas, any changes there? Dad sighed. He's not taking the new situation well. Apparently he had some business venture he was counting on Mom and me to fund. When we told him that wasn't possible anymore, he started talking about moving to Los Angeles to pursue his music. I bit back a sarcastic comment about Lucas's perpetually imminent music career. Maybe independence would be good for him too. Maybe Dad agreed, not sounding convinced. Listen, son, there's something else. Your mother may not be ready to say it, but I am. I'm sorry. For everything. For letting the situation get so out of hand. For not being the father you deserved these past few years. His voice cracked slightly, and I felt my own throat tighten. Dad. No, let me finish. I was depressed after the business failed. Really depressed. I felt like a failure as a provider, as a man. When you stepped in to help, it was a relief at first, but then it became, I don't know, easier to just let you carry everything, to abdicate my responsibilities. That wasn't fair to you. Thank you for saying that. I managed emotion thick in my voice. It means a lot. I want to make things right, Mario. With you, with your mother, with myself. This job is just the beginning. I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet again, I promise you that. After we hung up, I sat in silence for a long time, processing the conversation. My father's honesty had cracked something open inside me, a door to forgiveness I hadn't realized was locked shut. If he could acknowledge his mistakes and take steps to change, perhaps there was hope for our family after all. The next 2 weeks brought more positive developments. Dad started his new job and was thriving, coming home with stories about customers and coworkers engaging with life again. Mom, according to Dad's reports, had reluctantly begun working with Janet on her resume and had even applied for a receptionist position at a local dental office. Then came the text I'd been both hoping for and dreading. Your mother would like to talk. Can you come for dinner Sunday? Just you. Not Sophia. Please. The exclusion of Sophia raised immediate red flags, but Dad assured me it was because Mom wanted to speak privately, family to family. After discussing it with Sophia, who encouraged me to go despite her concerns, I agreed. The house looked different when I arrived. Cleaner, more organized. The expensive furniture Mom had bought was gone, replaced by simpler pieces I didn't recognize. We sold a lot of things, Dad explained, following my gaze. Part of the budget restructuring, Janet suggested. Turns out we didn't need half of what we had. Mom was in the kitchen stirring a pot of her homemade tomato sauce. She looked smaller, somehow less formidable. When she saw me, she wiped her hands nervously on her apron. Mario, she said, her voice lacking its usual commanding tone. Thank you for coming. Dinner was a quiet affair, none of us quite sure how to bridge the chasm that had opened between us. Dad chatted about his job. I shared a few details about a project at work, and Mom remained mostly silent, watching me, with an expression I couldn't quite read. Finally, as Dad cleared the plates, Mom folded her hands on the table. I've been unfair to you, she said abruptly. For a long time now, your father helped me see that. I nearly dropped my water glass in shock. In 33 years, I'd never heard my mother admit to being wrong about anything. When your father's business failed, she continued, I was terrified. We had no savings, mountains of debt, and no prospects. When you offered to help, it felt like divine intervention. But then, she trailed off, looking down at her hands. Then it became expected I finished for her. She nodded slowly. Yes, expected, assumed, required. I told myself it was your duty as our son, that we deserved it after raising you. But that wasn't right or fair. No, it wasn't, I agreed, not unkindly. Your father getting that job, it changed something. Seeing him excited about life again, contributing again, it made me realize how far we'd fallen, how much we'd come to depend on you instead of ourselves. She looked up, her eyes glistening. I'm not good at apologies, Mario. I never have been. But I am sorry. For what I said. For how I've treated you. For everything. The words I'd thought I needed to hear. Yet they felt insufficient compared to years of manipulation and the final explosive rejection. Thank you for saying that, I said carefully. It's a start. A start, she repeated, a flicker of her old defensiveness returning. What else do you want from me, Mario Blood? Dad returned from the kitchen, catching the shift in tone. Teresa, he said warningly, we talked about this. She took a deep breath, visibly collecting herself. You're right. I'm sorry. Again. This island. Difficult for me. It's difficult for all of us, Mom, I said, but necessary. I know, and I am trying. I had an interview yesterday at the dental office. I think it went well. She offered a tentative smile. The dentist said he was impressed with my administrative experience. That's great news, I encouraged. I hope you get it. If I do, she continued, and, with your father's job, we should be able to make the mortgage payments ourselves within 2 months. Janet helped us create a budget. She gestured to a spreadsheet posted on the refrigerator door, color-coded and detailed. I'm impressed, I said honestly. That's significant progress in a short time. We've also talked to Lucas' dad, added, returning to his seat. Really talked to him. About responsibility, independence, his future. It wasn't an easy conversation. I imagine not, I said, remembering my brother's entitled attitude. He's moving out next week, Mom said, surprising me again. To share an apartment with 2 friends. They've all committed to finding steady jobs within 30 days or they lose their rooms. The changes were more substantial than I'd dared to hope for. My parents were not just accepting the transition plan, but embracing it, taking ownership of their situation for the first time in years. It wasn't perfect. Mom's apology had come with strings attached, and old habits wouldn't disappear overnight, but it was a genuine beginning. I've been thinking about the mortgage, I said, reaching a decision. I'll cover it for 3 more months, giving you both time to settle into your jobs and build some savings. After that, it's in your hands, and I'll help Lucas with his first month's rent as a fresh start gift. The relief on their faces was palpable. Not the entitled expectation I'd grown used to, but genuine gratitude for a defined, limited form of assistance. Thank you, son, Dad, said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. For everything. For not giving up on us even when we gave you every reason to. Mom nodded, her eyes now definitely wet. We don't deserve your generosity, but we appreciate it more than we can say. As I drove home that night, I felt a weight lifting. Not completely gone, there would be setbacks, old patterns reasserting themselves, moments of doubt and frustration on all sides. But a family that had been slowly poisoned by financial dependence and emotional manipulation was taking its first steps toward healing. Sophia was waiting up for me, curled on the couch with a book that she set aside when I entered. How did it go? She asked, studying my face. I sat beside her, taking her hand in mine. Better than I expected. Much better. They're actually changing Sophia, taking responsibility, making plans. That's wonderful, she said, genuine happiness in her voice. I'm so proud of you for standing your ground. I know how hard that was. I couldn't have done it without you, I told her honestly. Your support, your perspective. You helped me see what I couldn't see on my own. She leaned her head against my shoulder. That's what partners do. They help each other grow even when it's uncomfortable. Partners. The word felt right. As I held Sophia close, I realized that for the first time in years I was looking forward to the future with hope rather than dread. A future where I could have a relationship with my family built on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. A future where Sophia and I could build our lives together without the shadow of my family's expectations hanging over us. It wouldn't be perfect, nothing worth having ever island, but it would be honest and real and ours, and that was enough. 6 months passed in a blur of positive changes. Dad was promoted to full-time status at Burlington with a modest raise and full benefits. Mom not only got the receptionist position but excelled at it, her natural organizational skills and commanding presence, making her an asset to the dental practice. They'd made every mortgage payment themselves for 3 months, running a fact, Dad proudly reported during our now regular Sunday phone calls. Lucas, surprisingly, had maintained his apartment share and found steady work as a sound technician at a local recording studio. The job wasn't glamorous, but it connected him to the music industry he loved while providing stable income. He'd even apologized to me awkwardly but sincerely for his attitude over the years. I was a mooch, he admitted during a rare phone call. You were an easy target because you never said no. My relationship with Sophia deepened through this period of family reconstruction. Watching her unwavering support during the difficult conversations, her gentle encouragement when I doubted myself, and her genuine happiness at each positive development confirmed what I already knew. She was the partner I wanted by my side. For life. On a crisp autumn evening, 6 months to the day after our confrontation in the park, I asked Sophia to marry me. Not with a grand gesture or public spectacle, but quietly, privately, in the small garden behind our apartment building where we often sat with morning coffee. She said yes before I finished asking, tears streaming down her face, and we spent the evening planning our future together with the kind of joyful certainty that only comes when you've found your true match. Telling my parents about the engagement was the final test of our healing relationship. I invited them to dinner at a nice restaurant, which I insisted on paying for old habits die hard, and Sophia wore her ring openly. Mom spotted it immediately, her eyes widening as she glanced between us. Is that what I think it is? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. If you think it's an engagement ring, then yes, Sophia replied with a smile. Mario asked me last week. There was a moment of tension as Mom processed this information. The old Teresa might have reacted with passive-aggressive comments about not being consulted or included in the proposal plans, but the woman sitting across from us simply reached for Sophia's hand to examine the ring more closely. It's beautiful, she said finally. Simple but elegant, very much your style. Thank you, Sophia replied, genuine warmth in her voice. Congratulations, son. Dad said, raising his water glass in a toast. You couldn't have chosen a better partner. Mom hesitated, then raised her glass as well. To Mario and Sophia. May your life together be blessed with joy and understanding. It wasn't effusive enthusiasm, but it was sincere acceptance. From my mother that represented enormous growth. After dinner, as we walked to our cars, Mom pulled me aside. I wasn't always supportive of your relationship, she said quietly. I was jealous of her influence on you, threatened by the changes she inspired. That was wrong of me. Sophia is good for you. She helps you be your best self, which is what real love should do. Her words, unexpected and insightful, brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, Mom. That means everything to me. I'm learning, she said with a small smile. Slowly at my age, but learning nonetheless. The wedding planning process revealed how much had changed in our family dynamic. Mom offered suggestions rather than demands, respected our decisions even when they differed from her preferences, and worked harmoniously with Sophia's parents on shared responsibilities. When I offered to help my parents with some of the traditional costs, Dad firmly refused. We've budgeted for this, he insisted. It's important to us to contribute to your wedding as your parents, not as your dependents. The distinction was significant. They wanted to give from a place of strength and independence, not obligation or expectation. It was the healthiest our relationship had been in my adult life. The wedding itself was everything we'd hoped for, intimate, joyful, focused on our commitment rather than external displays. During the reception, Dad gave a toast that brought the room to tears. To watch my son grow into the man he is today has been the greatest privilege of my life, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Mario, you taught me what real strength looks like. Not the false pride that keeps a man from admitting his failures, but the true courage to stand firm in your values, even when it's difficult. The lesson came later in life than it should have, but I'm eternally grateful for it. Looking around at our gathered loved ones, Sophia radiant beside me, my parents supporting each other, both literally and figuratively, Lucas sober and engaged with the moment rather than checking his phone, I felt a profound sense of peace. The journey had been painful, the confrontations uncomfortable, but the outcome was worth every difficult moment. In the months that followed the wedding, Sophia and I began looking for a house planning for the family we hoped to start. My parents continued their journey toward financial independence, even taking a modest vacation paid for entirely from their own savings. Our Sunday dinners became a treasured tradition, occasionally including Lucas when he wasn't working weekend events. The transformation wasn't without setbacks. Mom sometimes slipped into old patterns of manipulation when stressed. Dad had moments of passivity that frustrated both Mom and me. I occasionally found myself reverting to the role of financial rescuer before catching myself. But these regressions became less frequent and less severe as we all remained committed to healthier patterns. A year after that fateful dinner where Mom had told me to get out and never come back, we gathered at my parents' home to celebrate their 35th wedding anniversary. As we shared memories and laughter, I reflected on the journey we'd taken together and the lessons I'd learned along the way. First and foremost was the understanding that genuine love requires healthy boundaries. Without limits, generosity becomes exploitation, gratitude becomes entitlement, and relationships become transactional rather than nurturing. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish or cruel, it was necessary for authentic connection. I'd also learned the painful truth that family patterns don't change without discomfort. The status quo, however, dysfunctional, has a powerful gravity. Breaking free requires courage, persistence, and the willingness to endure temporary pain for long-term health. Had I not stood firm in that park meeting, had I caved to guilt and obligation as I had so many times before, nothing would have changed. Perhaps most importantly, I discovered that financial support, while sometimes necessary and appropriate, cannot substitute for emotional growth or personal responsibility. By constantly rescuing my parents from the consequences of their financial choices, I'd been denying them the opportunity to develop their own resilience and resourcefulness. My help had become a subtle form of harm. As I watched my father refill everyone's wine glasses, a modestly priced but good quality wine he'd proudly selected, I realized that the greatest gift I'd given my family wasn't the mortgage payments or other financial assistance. It was the gift of consequences, of accountability, of the chance to reclaim their dignity by standing on their own feet again. A toast, I said, raising my glass, to second chances and new beginnings, to the courage to change even when change is terrifying, and to family not as an obligation but as a choice we make every day to love each other with honesty and respect. To family, everyone echoed, glasses clinking in the warm evening light. Later, as Sophia and I drove home, she placed her hand gently on my knee. "You know what I'm most proud of?" she asked. "How you managed to set boundaries without burning bridges. That's rare, Mario. Most people either stay trapped in toxic patterns or cut ties completely. You found a middle path." Her observation crystallized something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. The journey hadn't been about escaping my family or changing them to suit my preferences. It had been about creating a relationship where all of us could be our authentic selves, with honesty, mutual respect, and appropriate expectations. As we pulled into our driveway, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text. She smiled as she read it. "Your mom wants to know if we're free for lunch tomorrow. Just the two of us. She wants my opinion on redecorating their living room." I laughed, amazed at how far we'd come. Tell her yes, and tell her I love her. Some might look at our family story and see only conflict and pain. But I see something different. The painful but necessary growth that transformed a family drowning in unhealthy patterns into individuals who choose each other freely without obligation or resentment. It wasn't easy, and it's still a work in progress, but the authentic connection we share now is worth every difficult moment along the way. If you're struggling with similar family dynamics, Remember that setting boundaries isn't about rejection. It's about creating the conditions where genuine love can flourish. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling behaviors that keep them trapped in dependency. Real love empowers, it doesn't diminish. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? How did it change your relationship? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, you're not alone in these struggles, and with courage and persistence, healing is possible for every family. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and wisdom in your own journey toward healthier relationships.